Okay, have you ever looked at a standard 10th grade geography test and realized, wait a minute, this is literally a blueprint for understanding global superpowers? Well, welcome to today's explainer. We are taking a standard geography exam paper from the Maharashtra board and completely transforming its questions and answers into a fascinating, heavyweight comparative case study. We're going to dive deep into two massive, complex republics that absolutely shape our world, India and Brazil.
So here is our roadmap for the comparison today. First, a tale of two nations. Then, we'll hit location and extents, followed by geography and environment. After that, we'll look at the road to independence, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with modern demographics. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, Location and Extents. We're zooming all the way out to look at where these nations actually sit on the planetary map.
The biggest contrast right off the bat is their placement on the globe. India is locked firmly on the Asian continent, sitting entirely in the northern and eastern hemispheres. Brazil, on the flip side, is over in South America, occupying the western hemisphere and mostly the southern hemisphere. But here is the truly wild part, and the exam specifically emphasizes this. We always think of India as this incredibly vast place, right? But Brazil actually has a larger longitudinal extent. It literally stretches wider across the map.
And check out how they test this spatial awareness on the exam. Notice how just the top right quarter of this circle is highlighted? That perfectly and cleanly isolates India's exact northern and eastern placement on the globe. It's a pretty clever visualization, right?
Now, compare that to the shape for Brazil. It completely dominates the bottom half of the circle, showing its position mainly in the southern hemisphere. Actually, quick caveat here. You have to be a little careful with this one because, while it's mostly in the south, the equator does actually slice right through the very northern part of Brazil.
Moving on to Section 2, Geography and Environment. Let's transition from their global coordinates to the physical realities on the ground.
Let's run through some rapid-fire geographical contrasts straight from the test paper. In India, if you travel to the absolute northernmost part, you're hitting the majestic Himalayas and evergreen forests. Drop down to the middle, and the Tropic of Cancer slices right across the country. Go all the way down to the bottom, and you hit India's southernmost tip, Indira Point, right at the 6-degree, 45-minute north parallel. Now jump across the world to Brazil. Forget the Himalayas. Brazil is defined by the mighty Amazon River basin, which is primarily filled with these massive, dense swamps. And while India's coast borders multiple bodies of water, Brazil's sprawling coastline sits entirely along one single ocean, the Atlantic. Economically, this specific environment means Brazil leans heavily on primary activities. We're talking things like agriculture, mining, and forestry.
Okay, the board exam actually tests this knowledge with a really fun visual puzzle. Take a look at these four abstract silhouettes. Just based on what we've talked about, can you guess which one represents Brazil's coastline? I'll give you a second to think about it.
And here's the reveal. It's the first shape that correctly represents the coastal part of Brazil. Just look at that distinct, sweeping curve thrusting out into the Atlantic Ocean. It's a completely iconic shape that defines the entire eastern edge of the South American continent.
All right, Section 3, the road to independence. Let's shift our focus and look at their parallel historical struggles.
Brazil's historical timeline is really a story of endurance. For 3 full centuries, they were ruled by the Portuguese. They did eventually attain independence relatively early compared to a lot of colonies back in the year 1822. But, independence wasn't some instant magic fix. For 55 long years, spanning from 1930 all the way to 1985, Brazil was governed by a harsh, populist military dictatorship. And even as they emerged from that shadow in the late 20th century, the country ran right into massive, global-scale financial troubles.
Now let's stack India's timeline right up against that. India was governed by the British for about 1.5 centuries. They gained their independence quite a bit later than Brazil, in 1947. But much like Brazil, those post-independence decades were an absolute crucible. Almost immediately after colonial rule ended, India faced some immense growing pains. They had to fight 3 separate wars and battle severe regional famine conditions. So both of these massive republics had to forge their modern identities through some seriously intense hardship right out of the gate.
Which brings us to Section 4, Modern Demographics. Let's dive right into the societal data.
This data breakdown neatly contrasts their core identifiers. India is governed from New Delhi to the powerful tune of Jana Gana Mana, while Brazil's capital is Brasilia, singing the Hino Nacional Brasileiro. But the absolutely crucial part to look at is the societal metrics at the bottom. The exam source material makes a very deliberate point to show that historically, India has grappled with a comparatively low literacy rate and a low sex ratio. Brazil, on the other hand, is highlighted as having both a high literacy rate and a high sex ratio. It's a pretty stark comparison when you look at the social development outcomes between the two nations.
But to truly grasp the scale of the challenges each of these countries faces today, you have to look at population density. Sure, they're both massive, powerful nations, but look at the staggering difference in these numbers. Brazil has a current population of around 212 million. India? India sits at an unbelievable 1,300 million. That's 1.3 billion people. Just to put that into perspective, India holds over 1 billion more citizens than Brazil. That one single metric changes literally everything about how each government has to manage its resources, its land, and its entire economy.
So, we've covered the hemispheres, the coastlines, the histories, and the populations. But I want to wrap up this comparison by throwing a genuine curveball question at you, straight from the source material. It highlights this hidden historical crossover that you would probably never expect. Okay, are you ready? Did you know that the imperial power that ruled Brazil also ruled a part of India?
The answer is Portugal? No way, right? Yes, the Portuguese, who ruled Brazil for 3 entire centuries, were actually the very same imperial power that controlled the Indian territory of Goa. And here's the real kicker. While the rest of India gained its broader independence from the British in 1947, Goa didn't finally achieve its independence from Portugal until 1961. It completely leaves you pondering the deep, unexpected interconnectedness of global geography and history. You have 2 completely different continents, vastly different populations, all tied together by this one single strand of imperial history. Who knew a 10th grade exam could reveal so much about the fabric of our world? I hope this leaves you wanting to dig a little deeper into the maps we just take for granted every single day. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.